is the horseshoes and hand grenades fallacy? Well, you've certainly heard of phrases like everything is fair in love and war. So if you're walking by somebody on the street and they don't look at you and they don't talk to you, you think it's pretty fair to not look back at them and not talk to them because, we know what equivalence is. But let's say a girlfriend starts throwing everything her boyfriend has out on the balcony, and she starts throwing things in the trash, and she begins to take a knife and cut his clothes up, and then she pours Clorox bleach on his favorite jeans and on his bed, and then she starts trashing his apartment. When the police show up, because obviously the boyfriend's going to have a conniption, he's going to be like, this is insane. What is going on here? When they find out that these two were madly in love, but he was cheating on her, all of a sudden, everything that looked irrational is now going to look a lot more rational. It's like, oh, this is fair because it's love and war. Because we see that emotions tend to exaggerate and stretch things. And I want you to keep that in mind. The main concept here, though, is close doesn't count except for in horseshoes and hand grenades. So almost all the time, things have to be accurate. You have to pay your bills on time or you get late fees. You have to maintain a certain balance or you're going to pay a withdrawal fee. You have to put gas in the gas tank on a regular basis or you're going to run out of gas. Close doesn't count except for horseshoes and hand grenades. In horseshoes, if you have the horseshoe ring the stake, you get 5 points. If it leans up against the stake, you get 3 points. And if it's close enough, you get a point. Well, in military operations, in warfare, if you've got a gun and you're shooting at somebody and you're not accurate, close doesn't count. So that's when you pull out the hand grenades and you toss hand grenades, and you've only got to be pretty close for it to count. And so this is the way most people tend to argue, and especially when it comes to atheism versus Christianity, but they'll take these arguments and they'll just lob them like they're hand grenades, but they're not really hitting and they're not accurate as they would suppose. Let me dial this in just a hair further. Take, for instance, the example, husband and wife are going shopping at the grocery store, and it's a little tense because the finances are kind of tight, and because it's tight, they're arguing over, exactly which necessities they should get. And so the wife says, well, absolutely, we've got to buy toothpaste. And the husband goes, no, we don't have to have toothpaste. The wife is like, oh, yes, we do have to have toothpaste. The husband goes, no, I don't think so. And they're not really offering much more than that, but finally, the wife goes, why on earth do you think we do not need toothpaste? He goes, well, because I used it this morning. At this point, she is beginning to wonder. She's like, you used the toothpaste this morning? It's like, oh yeah. She's like, really? Can you tell me about that? Did you look at it? And he's like, well, no, I was a little hungover from last night, and I was afraid to turn on the lights because they were bothering me. And so I went to the restroom where the toothpaste is. I looked in the medicine cabinet with my hands where the toothpaste is. I reached in there and identified with my hands where the toothpaste is. And then I actually put it on my toothbrush and used it. I've got 4 lines here of convincing evidence. I mean, how much more evidence do I have to have that we actually have toothpaste at the house? So we're going to go without toothpaste. And the wife goes, well, I threw the toothpaste out. We only had 1 tube, and I threw it away. Husband's like, no, I used the toothpaste. She's like, did you? So you did not turn on the lights. You didn't lose another line of reasoning to verify. He's like, no, I didn't turn on the light. I told you I had a hangover and I didn't turn on the light. Like, did it taste funny to you? Well, it tasted a little funny. Well, why? What were you thinking at that point? Well, I thought that you had already replaced the toothpaste And maybe you forgot that you replaced the toothpaste, but yeah, it tasted kind of funny. So the wife responds, that was hemorrhoid cream. That was preparation H. What the heck are you doing? In that scenario, it doesn't matter if there was 4 lines of corollary reasoning or not. Did lines 5 and 6 matter, or did he really get the 4th confirmation correct? No, this is not. This is the horseshoes and hand grenades fallacy as it usually goes down, especially when it comes to atheism or whatnot. A lot of times, atheists will just grab on to the first thing that looks like unto what they're attacking, and they lob that argument that direction. So the way this happens is mostly there, and not for all atheists, but there's a lot of atheists that are just emotional, that have been hurt by the church, or they don't like the morality that's legislated to them, or maybe they were hurt by their family or a local church, and some of them, just reading through the commands of God, just don't like him as an authoritarian. And for whatever reasons, now that they are emotionally involved and they are against Christianity, they're just grabbing onto large concepts that line up in a few areas, and so they believe that is powerful enough to totally topple the argument. Close enough that it matters. Except that close doesn't count with horseshoes, except for horseshoes and hand grenades. So with that, when you get to something that is large scale or complex, and if we're talking about God, he would be very large scale and very complex. And in those matters, the larger things tend to get, the more accurate and precise you have to be about all of the components working. So take, for instance, to get a bicycle to work, there's a few main components. You've got your pedals, you've got your chain. I'm trying to think of the sprocket. You've got the sprocket, you've got the rear tire and a gear there. And let's just say it's a single speed BMX bike. It's a pretty simple process. You've only got to get a few things right for it to work. But let's say that was a motorcycle. How many things then have to be in line and functioning for the motorcycle to work? What about large scale versus small scale? If you lose 3% of your paycheck, you might survive that, no big deal. But if you lost 3% of a national budget, the scale and magnitude is enough to sink a ship. And so we have to understand here that you can't get close enough when you're talking about one of the largest and most pressing concepts of all time. Knee-jerk formulations of like, oh, I think this is the case because it looks like the case from these 4 lines of evidence. No, I want to be much, much more precise so that I can be sure that I know what I'm talking about and that the argument actually completely fits. I'm betting, if you'll be fair, if you will actually take all of the lines of evidence, let the lights come on, and when you feel a funny taste, if you'll really begin to examine the evidence, you'll only be able to come away with the conclusion that God exists and that you actually need him in your life.